Kia ora, welcome to Under the Checkered Flag, MotoGP edition. I'm your host Kate, and we're just going to jump right in. We were racing in Mugello this weekend, and something about Mugello always has that touch of magnificence. I don't know if it still just lingers from the times when we saw Rossi dominate Mugello, but there's just always going to be something a little bit more magnificent about it, especially this weekend because there are going to be some very sore heads around, I'm sure, because it was Italian domination. The Ducatis absolutely dominated the rest of the field. They blocked out both podiums on both days, and Pecco, he performed perfectly, and he won both the sprint and the main race, and we saw some Rossi-style celebrations from him on the Sunday, and it was actually a lot less corny than I expected it to be, which was good. Maybe it's just because it was Mugello that I sort of have a bit more tolerance for the really forced celebrations. That's what it feels like they're so planned out to the T. I'm just like, oh, it's kind of uncomfortable. But when it's Mugello, I sort of just give it a free pass because it's quite fun. I'd say there'd be a lot of sore heads around, but I don't think it's going to be the MotoGP guys because we're already so close to Sachsenring. There's no break in between. They're going to be ready to go, and their minds are already going to be fixed on Germany, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. Now I'm going to start this pod with my notable mention from Moto3, and that's going to be Denise Onchu, and I am honestly truly gutted for the guy. He was doing so well a weekend, topped all the sessions, comes the main race, he's leading, it's a great battle between him and some of the other riders, and you're like, yes, he's doing so well, come on. He goes around that final corner, still in the lead, and then mere meters from the finish line gets overtaken by his teammate, and the pain, and it was devastating. I truly feel for the kid. He will get his win one day, I'm hoping, but it was not at Mugello, and seeing the interview after with him, you could actually see him holding back tears, and my heart was truly breaking for the kid. If he had a chance to win so far this season, it was this. I felt like he deserved that win, and when he didn't get it, my stomach dropped. I was really gutted for the guy, and let's talk about the pain of that loss and just move it over to the pain that we're seeing in the Yamaha camp, because Yamaha, yet again, were nowhere in this race. There's just something seriously lacking at Yamaha, and it's time they sorted it, or at least made an effort to show they were sorting it, because they're getting no results. They've got two good riders. I think the fact that Morbidelli is up there with Quartararo at the moment is less about Quartararo joining Morbidelli's mental state and more about Morbidelli actually being back to physical fitness and ready to race. And now he's ready to race, he's on a bike that's not, and that's unfortunate, because why would anyone want to be on the Yamaha at the moment? It's just clearly got those traction issues, and yes, it is their own fault. They shouldn't have listened so much to Quartararo when he was talking about just giving it more speed. They do need to look at fixing that rear traction issue, because I have nothing else to say about them this weekend. I paid no attention to them in the race because they were nowhere in the race. There was so much happening up the front. It's like, oh, yeah, no. Yamaha? No, I didn't even realise they were in the race, which is a big flaw. But I'll leave it at that, and let's move over to Aprilia. We'll start with RNF. We had 3 RNF riders on the grid this weekend. It was good to see Oliveira back and actually finish a whole weekend without getting injured. Yes, he didn't finish the main race, but he also didn't get injured, and at this point for RNF, that's got to feel like a bit of a win, because guy's pretty luckless. Raul Fernandez was also back on the bike. He has just had arm pump surgery. He looked okay. He wasn't performing as well, but obviously it was quite a complicated surgery, so he will still be feeling the after effects of that. He did seem more comfortable on the bike, just from an outsider looking in, as did Miguel. Miguel seemed to perform pretty darn well, considering he's still got to be in a bit of discomfort, and he will be riding around that discomfort rather than riding back at 100%. But yeah, I think it's probably a really positive step forward for the RNF crew to have both their riders back and have the test rider on track. They would have collected a lot of data this weekend, and hopefully as they move into Sachsenring, we can start to see them pick up some more results. They're definitely going to be playing the long game now. With Oliveira being out and injured, I think it's going to be less about him performing absolutely brilliantly for the rest of the season. I think they're probably going to be focusing on building him and his confidence around that bike now, and starting to look forward to next season even, and the end of this season, so that that's when we can start to see results from RNF and Oliveira. And with that topic, we should probably talk about Elish in the factory Aprilia. Now, he was clearly injured on the Friday. It was quite tough to watch. I'm not one who enjoys watching negative displays of emotion, in the sense that I'm quite an empathetic person. So when he was clearly upset, and I wouldn't say angry at himself, but he was clearly injured. He was clearly upset that he was injured and wanted to be receiving better results than he was getting. So what happened was, the day before, on the Thursday, he was out on his bicycle texting. Not quite as bad as texting and driving, but he shouldn't be texting and cycling either. And he came off. He got some serious injuries. Fortunately, he did manage to push through them, but when I say serious injuries, he said, his direct quote was, "I destroyed my heel." And I've seen reports and some photos of medical treatment. My apologies. Medical treatment he received in the box, which was the fact that he had to have blood drained from his heel. And so he had his boot off, he got his blood drained from his heel, and then he got his boot back on, got back on the bike, and managed to go straight into Q2. Wow. I know we always talk about how tough these MotoGP guys are, but that was one of those moments where I was like, wow, these guys are truly incredible. Probably a little bit silly, but still, truly, absolutely incredible. He did manage to have a pretty reasonable weekend, scoring solid points on both days, and given the fact he was so injured, I think he will definitely be taking that as a win. I have enjoyed looking at all the photographs from Aprilia this weekend, because he had his family there. I love that wholesome family. They just seem truly happy. And I like seeing happiness, especially on the grid with the families and things like that. It's just nice and wholesome, and we all know I love my wholesome MotoGP. Over on the other side of the garage, however, not so wholesome. Maverick Vinales did seem to struggle this weekend. I didn't follow it much, and I haven't had time to go back and look through to see what was causing his issues, if it was ride or a bike or a combination of both. He did get points on the Sunday, but I think he'll be a little bit disappointed with his results. But overall, I think, he can't be too unhappy. He did score points. He did have a weekend where they will have collected a lot of data, and I think it'll just be one that they look over, go, okay, let's focus on the next one. On the topic of bikes that are better than the Yamaha, we'll move to KTM. So KTM had a pretty good weekend. Both Brad Binder and Jack Miller received solid points on the Sunday. Brad Binder showed that he's definitely a Sunday man, because he didn't perform so well in the sprint. He did qualify pretty low, but yeah, he doesn't seem to have a very good qualifying record. Hopefully that improves and he gets up there consistently in qualifying, because then I think he'll just dominate the field because he's that good on race pace. But the one KTM that I really want to talk about is Jack Miller. So this guy got an incredible launch off that start in the sprint, and that's saying something. We know these KTMs have incredible launch speed. They just vroom, straight away, straight off the mark. All the riders' reaction times are incredible, but that KTM just seems to have a touch of magic when it launches. It's awesome to watch. It's one of my favourite parts of the weekend, just watching those KTMs get off the line. So what I do want to talk about is the sprint race, Alex Marquez, Marc Marquez, Luca Marini and Jack Miller. So we saw some of Jack Miller's communication. So if you're a rider, I'm a rider, we have our own language, it seems. It's one of my favourite parts about being a rider. Whether you're a road rider, track rider, dirt bike rider, you'll have seen some of this language just in the way that riders communicate with each other. So here in New Zealand, we have, I imagine it's worldwide, but I definitely know in New Zealand, if there's something on the road and you're riding past it, you kick your leg out to gesture to the rider behind you that there's something on the road, just be aware of it. If you've got a rider coming in the other direction and they've seen a police officer up ahead, they do the friendly little head tap. There are some funny videos online of police officers doing the friendly little head tap, like police officer riders. It's good fun. It's just this language we have. Again, I digress. I go off on tangents a lot. I'm sorry. Back to MotoGP. So this incident between Jack Miller and Alex Marquez, what happened is Alex Marquez, in my opinion, came into a corner too hot. He had to brake to make sure he didn't take out his brother, Marc Marquez, so he ran wide. When he was cutting back in, he aimed for a bit of tarmac that Jack Miller was already at. And obviously Jack Miller being Jack Miller, such a top bloke, also a very expressive bloke, he was not happy. Hand goes up, gestures wildly at Alex Marquez, fully deserved in my opinion, but this is one of my favourite things about MotoGP is the riders' communication with each other. So it was just like what are you doing, bro? Sort of, the classic Aussie, hand up, screw you, basically. And that was, without a doubt, one of the more fun things, and I love these interactions that we see between the riders. It's definitely something I feel like is worth capitalising on and mentioning whenever I see it. And Jack Miller is definitely one of the best riders for this, because he's without a doubt the most expressive. I guess we could call him a little hot-headed on the track. We all have our own language, and it's just one of those points of difference that I feel we should really embrace and encourage. And this is the sort of content that I feel Dorna and content creators that are in the paddock should be sharing. The noises, that that we all use to express how the bike's feeling and what's happening with the bike. I just really enjoy seeing that sort of thing. Maybe it's because I'm a MotoGP nerd, a bike nerd a bit. Like, I love the tech side of things just as much as I love the racing side of things, and just as much as I love the rider side of things. So I really think that it's so much fun to watch the hand gestures and all the things like that, because most of these riders, they get along well enough. It's quite clear to anyone who's been around MotoGP for a while that some of them definitely don't get along. Like, for example, Pecco and Marc, because in qualifying we saw Marc Marquez, he was going out. To me, I haven't seen the breakdown, I haven't seen the interviews with the riders where they talk about what happened. From my personal perspective, it looked like Marc was going out to get a tow from Marco Bezzecchi. Whether you like towing or not, it's a tactic that can be used. It's not against the rules, and that's just my opinion on it. If a rider's going to use that tactic, they're going to use that tactic. If they're not, they're not. It personally doesn't bother me. Yes, I'm a Marc fangirl. I'm a fangirl of all the riders, but it's just one of those tactics. Whether you agree with it or not, I really don't care. But it's, a debatable topic. So to me, it looked like Marc was going out to get a tow from Marco Bezzecchi, because that's who he was going out afterwards, and who wouldn't want a tow from a Ducati right now, if you're inclined to tow, that is. Please don't yell at me in any comments. He ended up going out just as Pecco was coming around the line, and Pecco was very not happy about it. We saw some more hand gestures. These were more of a very aggressive style, so Pecco was clearly angry. He was shaking his fist at Marc, and there was lots of tension, and Marc is never going to be liked in Italy after certain events in the past, which I will not touch here. However, that definitely didn't help matters, and what I found absolutely hilarious was Marc just putting up his finger and being like, no, 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 you don't get to do that to me. This is just a misunderstanding. And yeah, I found it quite funny. And then after qualifying, to amplify the situation, Pecco is waving to the crowd, and as Marc rides past him, he gives a thumbs up to Pecco, and you're just like, you really should have thought that through before you did it, Marc. I honestly don't think he was meaning anything bad by it. I think it was just a really silly thing that he did. And I did see afterwards, because Pecco got pole, Marc Marquez got P2, I did see them talking just in that moment after qualifying, and they didn't seem angry at each other. I mean, Pecco looks a bit fed up, but when is Pecco not fed up with Marc? It's just one of those things that's sort of ingrained in the culture of those two. I mean, they're both world champions. They're both there to win. And yeah, I just thought that's also another notable mention from the weekend. But back to Alex Marquez. I do apologise for the tangent there. It was just quite a funny incident. Don't know where that voice came from. Again, tangent over. So Alex Marquez, another weekend to forget for him. He crashed out in both the sprint and the main race, I think. He's doing what Jorge Martin did last year, in my opinion. He's got in his own head, and I think he's feeling a lot of pressure to perform where he probably shouldn't be focusing on that. He should just focus on riding, making sure he finishes races, not worry so much at this stage about the positioning where he's finishing, because it's his first year on that Ducati and he performed well at the start of the season, and I think that is causing this mental issue for him where he feels that he has to go above and beyond because he started strongly, whereas I think he'll be better dialing it back a bit, just taking a breather and riding the bike to finish the race and then work on improving, because at the moment he's crashing out reasonably early in the races as well, and so he needs to have a bit of a look at himself and try and stay on that bike next weekend. On the other side of the Grassini garage though, Fabio Di Gianantonio, he should be worrying. Now, it is no secret to anyone paying attention that Tony Arbolino is after his seat. The rumour mill started maybe 2-3 weeks ago, and it hasn't got any quieter. So Fabio Di Gianantonio was spotted in the Superbike paddock along with Franco Morbidelli a couple of weeks ago, and the rumours were already around, and then they just got heightened. Tony Arbolino's made it clear that he does want to be in MotoGP next season, and the bike he wants is going to be Fabio Di Gianantonio's, because he wants a Ducati, and really with the way Arbolino has been performing in Moto2, if Digi doesn't step up, then that seat's pretty much guaranteed for Tony Arbolino, and I think that's more likely going to happen than not. And then it does lead into the fact it may put a bit of pressure on KTM and the Acosta situation if Tony Arbolino moves up, because they're going to have an advantage, Ducati. If they move Arbolino up, he's going to have an extra year ahead of Acosta. if that situation develops the way I think it's going to, with Acosta staying another year in Moto2. But we'll just have to wait and see. This isn't a silly season pod, it's an attempted race review pod. So back to the satellite Ducatis. So Bezzecchi, he performed strongly. He got P8 in the race, I believe. He got P2 in the sprint, so he did get some solid points in the bag. I don't think those results are what he wanted. Obviously, they want to win. But it's good to still have Bezzecchi in the title fight. And another one who is now making his presence a lot more known in the title fight is Jorge Martin. So he has had a bit of a slower start to the season than I expected, and I'm sure a slower start than many others expected. But now he seems to have gained a little bit of confidence. He podiumed both days with a P3 in the sprint and a P2 in the main race. I think as long as he continues to build on this momentum and perform these solid P2 and P3 results, which I do believe now he got that confidence of the sprint win under his belt, I think we'll start to see him become more comfortable like he did, hopefully more reliable, because Jorge Martin is incredibly talented and he's going to want to prove himself more and more as the time goes past, because if Pecco continues his win it or bin it strategy, there is also the option that Pecco may be passed over at some point for another rider at the end of next year when Pecco's Ducati contract runs out, unless, of course, he does give them many more wins and more titles. But Jorge Martin's going to be starting to think about the future, and obviously he's going to want a factory Ducati seat, and so if he keeps giving these solid P2 and P3 performances, I think he's got lots of options come the end of next year when silly season is truly in full force. Over on the other side of the Pramac Ducati garage, we had Johann Zarco, P4 in the sprint, P3 in the race. Solid result, but solid results are sort of to be expected from Johann Zarco. He's been in the paddock a while we all know he hasn't had his win in the Premier class yet. I'm still holding out hope, so it's still definitely a yet from me. We expect these results from Zarco. He's reliable, he always gets points. If he's not at the front of the grid, I wonder what's happened, really. I feel like Zarco is quite a solid benchmark to put Jorge Martin against, because Jorge's young, he's got a lot of potential, and Zarco's, he's not old by any means, but he's definitely got a lot more experience on that bike, and there is that question is Zarco going to be in the paddock next year? And is he going to be going over to superbikes? We've heard the rumours of the Martin to Yamaha, Bezzecchi to Pramac, and Morbidelli to VR46, but then there's also the question of Zarco. Maybe he'll go to superbikes, maybe he won't. I quite enjoy him in the paddock. He's a bit of a character. A lot of people love him, a lot of people hate him. I just think he's quite a reliable guy to have in the paddock and give us those solid results. And hopefully we will see that backflip. Maybe when it rains. Fingers crossed. I will have my fingers and toes crossed. Onchu, Zarco, and Canet, I all want them to get their first win. I'll have a party, especially if it's all in the same race, like on the same day. Boy, it will be party city at my house. I'm not going to say I'd call in sick because my boss might listen to this, but I'd pop some champagne after work on the Monday, because time zones, It's Monday morning when I'm watching races here, so got to be a little bit careful, a little bit wise, make sure I go straight to sleep after the race, etc, etc. So that's it for the Ducatis that I feel like mentioning. So now we will move on to probably what I'm going to have my biggest rant about today. At Honda, it's just heartbreak. That's it. Heartbreak, horrifying, horrific. all the H words that are not good should be used to describe Honda at the moment, because it's just a crash fest for all the riders. So people like to joke on Marc Marquez being the one who crashes the most. I think we can all see it clear as day right now, or anyone who pays enough attention to not be sucked into the media's fascination with Marc Marquez. That Honda is a horrible ride. It has been built badly. It's not good advertising for Honda in any way, shape or form. So Joan Mir crashed in a practice session this week and broke a bone in his hand. But even so, most of the time the riders, just, minor injury, get back on the bike. There were 28 minutes left in that practice session. He just left. I don't blame him in the slightest. Joan Mir has crashed more in a weekend this season than he did in all of 2020. I think the dude needs to break his contract and get on any other bike. Heck, he should even get on that Yamaha, because at least the Yamaha isn't breaking their riders. Because not only did Joan Mir break a bone in his hand, possibly a finger, I'm not too sure about which one it was. To me, it doesn't really matter. It's still a broken bone in his hand. They use their hands for clutch, brake, acceleration. Hands are pretty important things. Over in LCR, Alex Rins came off in the sprint and did some serious damage. If you're watching the video version, I've got a few pictures on screen, not of the crash or the damage, just about where he came off, the angle he took and things like that, because he came off the bike, it was a low side, however either the bike clipped him or his leg got caught, because he has broken his leg in two separate places, two different bones, and he was immediately airlifted to hospital. Thankfully he's okay, and he will be okay, but we are looking like he's not going to be back at all for the rest of the season, quite possibly, based on the medical knowledge I have. So he was airlifted to hospital, immediately underwent surgery, and I've seen some of the photos from after the surgery. He's basically got a bunch of pins, some screws in there. It's a serious break, and this is one of those breaks that's gonna be with him for the rest of his life, obviously. That was a poor choice of words on my part. All breaks are with people for the rest of their lives, but this is a serious break, and he's going to be non-weight bearing for quite a while, and then you've got to learn to walk again, then you've got to learn what you can do a little bit differently because of the severity of the break. So if you've broken a bone before, and then after 6 or so months on one of those cold days, you can feel those breaks, you can feel the aches and the pains, and it's just ugly to watch, and ugly to know that Joan Mir and Alex Rins are two brilliant riders. They have different riding styles. Alex Rins has obviously adapted to the Honda better, but quite frankly that doesn't matter anymore, because he's definitely out of this triple header. He is probably, I will be surprised if we see him back, at least until, I don't know, maybe Japan? I could see him coming back around then, but why would you want to? I'd be looking at that Honda. If I was any other rider on the grid, you get offered a Honda contract, you're gonna be like, no. You know why? I value my life. I value my bones. I value my body. The only rider who is staying on the bike at the moment is Taka Nakagami, and I have great respect for Taka. He's a great rider. All of the riders on the grid are there for a reason, and I believe that Taka's only finishing in P14 and around that area because he's not overriding that Honda, because he has respect for his own body. He does not want to destroy himself just to win a race. Marc Marquez has made it clear that he will do whatever it takes to win. We know he overrides that Honda. We've seen that Joan Mir and Alex Rins have been overriding that Honda now as well. Something's got to change at Honda, because they can't keep doing this. They've run out of riders. We've got 2 riders out with broken bones. Marc Marquez, I suppose he stands a chance of winning in Sachsenring, but really, that bike is so bad. If Marc doesn't win in Sachsenring, he's gone. in my opinion. His break clause will be insanely high based on how much he's being paid. But the guy is there on the grid to win. He has not minced his words in wanting to win, even another race, another championship, anything. He is at his wit's end. I think most people are at their wit's end watching that Honda on the grid. It's just... yes. Anyway, sorry. Okay. Honda rant over. But fix your bike, Honda. Okay? Please, for my sanity. Let's look forward to a much happier topic. It's Sachsenring next week. I love Sachsenring because I'm a Honda fan. I'm a Marc Marquez fan, and so if he has a chance of winning, it's going to be this week. I am going to be having my fingers, my toes, and basically my eyes as well. Everything's going to be crossed for that Marc Marquez win because I would absolutely love it. Sachsenring, thinking about it, is only my third favourite track. My second favourite track, definitely Assen. My first favourite, in my opinion, with motorbikes, you cannot beat Phillip Island. Phillip Island is so much fun to watch. It is my favourite race. While I've never attended it, it's my favourite race to watch while I'm having my glass of wine on the sofa with my blankie and patting my dog. It's my happy place, Phillip Island. It also helps that it's actually at a reasonable time because I live in New Zealand and Phillip Island's in Australia. I'm not watching the race at 2 a.m, which is quite pleasant. It's quite nice to, get a good night's sleep after watching a race. So that's probably my order of tracks, although it is subject to change. It changes week to week, day to day, depending on what I'm doing. But Phillip Island is always going to be number one for me. But I digress. Predictions. Let's be real. This is turning into a bit of a Ducati Cup, whether you like it or not. It's just is what it is. We've got 8 Ducatis on the grid. They're performing strongly. But I like to live on a cloud of opium. Therefore, there will only be 1 Ducati in my predictions for the podium at Sachsenring. And it's not going to be P3 in the sprint, because I put P3 in the sprint, Fabio Quartararo. I may be running on a cloud of opium. I may be just off in a daydream world, but I'm going to be off in my daydream world, happy and hoping for that Yamaha to get P3 in the sprint at Sachsenring. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything crossed. However, I'm not on that cloud of opium so high that I don't think we're going to get a Ducati. I think we're getting Jorge Martin in P2 in the sprint. Only in the sprint, and it is the only Ducati I have put on the podium for this week. Still, cloud of opium, definitely. P1, I'm going to have to do it. I know that Honda is an absolute mess, but I'm going to have to back my boy. Come on, Marc. Marc Marquez, P1 in the sprint. Like he said before, absolutely everything crossed. I need it badly for my Honda heart. Otherwise, my Honda heart is suffering heartbreak. Even more than it is. It's definitely already suffering heartbreak. So, those are my predictions. Sprint race, Quartararo P3, Jorge Martin P2, Marc Marquez P1. So let's move over to the main race. Now here, I've put no Ducatis. I don't think a Ducati is going to get on the podium in the main race at Sachsenring. That's my biggest prediction. That's my boldest prediction, and I'm going to stick with it. P3, I have put Jack Miller. He performed well here previously. He's now on the KTM, which is incredibly good at the start. Decent in the corners, better than the Ducatis in the corners, in my opinion. I think he's got a good shot at podiuming. Probably better shot at podium in the sprint. However, I think, fingers crossed, he can keep those tyres from cooking. Please, Jack, keep those tyres from cooking. And yeah, get that P3 in the main race. And then I think his teammate, Brad Binder, is going to be in P2. So Brad Binder's definitely a Sunday man. I think he's going to perform well at Sachsenring both days. But I think the day he's truly going to shine is that Sunday, because he is the Sunday man. So I put him in P2. P1, again, I'm backing my boy. Marc Marquez, I've put him in P1 again. I don't care if he just wins one day, but please, get a good result, please. So recapping, I put Jack Miller for P3, Brad Binder for P2, Marc Marquez for P1. So those are my predictions. I'll recap them next week. We'll see how wrong I was. Unfortunately, I did go back and listen to my previous recording of the triple header preview. I didn't do any predictions. What was I thinking? I have absolutely no idea, because it'd be good to look back and see how wrong I was. Fortunately, next weekend I will be able to look back at these predictions, see how completely accurate I was, because this is MotoGP. It's so predictable. We all know who's going to win. Yes, that was sarcasm, but I will be able to look back on my predictions. Maybe I'll start myself a point system, see how absolutely shocking I do. But we will see. We'll come back next week. Well, I'll be here next week. Please join me. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe. Have a great weekend. Let's go Sachsenring!